Here we are. It is episode 3. The Well Overflow podcast, Conversations at the Well.
Who'd have known?
Yeah, we made it to 3. The perfect number, actually.
Yeah. So, according to God, what do we got going on here, Andy?
I brought in some balloons today. Still no spruce, but we got some balloons. And I actually snagged them from this past Sunday's connection event that we had. It was immediately following our service.
All right, we're going to leave them there the whole time?
For this whole episode. This episode, I think the last right there. But our connection event on Sunday, it's just a time for our congregation to come around and see all the different fields of serving that we have available here in the church.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah.
Good time. So good chance to meet a lot of people and help them get connected a little bit more here at the Well.
That's right. So we've got 2 questions this week. That's kind of nice. A little bit of... we can spend a little more time in each of these questions.
That can be dangerous, though.
Yeah, it surely
Hopefully don't get lost in the weeds.
For sure. We've been known to do so. So, anyways, I'll just start it right off.
Okay.
Yep. Let me preface by saying this. This past Sunday, the service was on 1 Thessalonians chapters 2 and 3. It was 2:17 through 3 verse 5.
Right.
Yep. And it was Paul's longing to see the Thessalonians again.
Sure.
Could you give us just a quick little recap of maybe the broad scope of that service?
Oh, now I got to remember what I said on Sunday.
The anticipation of hope.
Yeah, it's this idea that Paul wanted to go see them, and he references that they're his joy, they're his glory. When he stands before the Lord, whenever that is, all right? When he stands before the Lord, what's his glory? What's his joy? And he uses the word boast. He gets to boast. Like, look at, he even uses this phrase, my labor wasn't in vain, right? So he longs to make sure that they're okay. Yeah. Because he got run out of town, and he just wants to make sure that their faith is good. And so he wants to see them, but he's doing it in the anticipation of the return of Jesus, of what we're going to see later in the book, the rapture, where we're finally reunited with Jesus. And it was all about it. How does that anticipation of hope drive what we do today, help us to interact with the world around us, see the world around us, have some fruit of joy that comes out. So, yeah.
I loved how our reflection really was emphasizing the joy of the fruit.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. People either impacting our spiritual journey or memories of us impacting or having an impact on others' spiritual journey. So very good. Yeah. Well, here's our first question. We had 2 questions like I previously mentioned, and I'm going to read this one straight up. And so I don't want to get it boggled. So here we go. It starts with a statement. It says, "You will not know the time nor day when Jesus returns." Okay. And then the person says, "However, is it possible that the time and day that we transition from this life on earth to be with Jesus," I would say this is death, when we die and we transfer from this earth to be with Jesus, could this be the moment of Jesus' return to us, and not necessarily an earthly return, but rather a personal return?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. And honestly, when I read that question, it took me a minute to wrap my brain around it. Like, I think it is referring to they're referring to this whole idea of the rapture and Jesus coming, and that is where I think they're headed. What does that look like? Can that be more of a personal deal than a global one? First of all, I don't know what the rapture is going to look like. Okay, I don't know when it's going to be. But I know certain aspects about it. And I know that Paul is, as his letters, right, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, the letters to Thessalonians, he's going to go on and give us some really good, things to hang our hat on. He's not going to give us all the details, but I think he's going to give us and paint a pretty good picture. And so part of this, I want to ask the questionnaire to just hang tight with us. Keep coming. Either, live, would love to have you live, but if, online, because as we go, I think Paul's going to paint a picture. In fact, on February 23rd, the title is A Picture of Hope. And we'll be dealing with Paul's picture of what this event looks like. For me, when I look over what Jesus said in Matthew 24, and I think, didn't you have that? You have that, yeah.
That's right.
Why don't you read what Jesus says about it in Matthew 24?
Yep, you got it. That's a pretty safe approach, getting it from God himself.
There you go.
So Matthew 24 and the verse is 29, it's actually titled, The Coming of the Son of Man. So here we go. It says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. This is a pretty big event already. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all of the tribes of the earth, this is not a secretive thing, all of the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory.
Wow.
Oh.
So I take from that whatever this ends up looking like, it's going to be kind of a big deal. I don't want to get in the problem that honestly the Israelites did, where they missed the coming of the Messiah because they thought it was going to be this big conquering king and all that stuff. So I don't want to overstate, but it does seem like it's going to be a big deal. And then we also hear, phrases like, as lightning flashes from the east to the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. It seems like it's going to be a big deal, and it seems like it's going to be obvious, and it seems like it's going to be global. So I would say, in direct answer to the question is, I don't believe it's going to be a personal return. It's going to be a global return with personal impact.
I like that.
So
that was actually nice. I like that. That's really nice. Wow, taking it from this broad scope right to a very personal relationship. And it is a personal relationship,
right?
Yeah, a personal aspect right there. It's a bit of an abstract thought to try to think of each person's. To think of like the return that's happening, the return, or either the rapture, as just an individual moment for each person. Right. That is a difficult abstract thought to try to conceive.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that way. I think it's going to be global with a personal impact for sure.
Very good. So I actually have the next question right here as well. And again, with the previous question, hang tight because we're going to be addressing that quite a bit more in the next few weeks.
Yes.
So
hopefully you'll get a bigger picture as it goes.
Yeah. Very good. So our other question is, what is the truth behind the concept of crowns in heaven?
What's the truth? He had to throw the truth in there, didn't this guy? Whoever this was.
Before you dive into this, actually, there's an interesting thing about this podcast being in relation to the sermon, the Sunday sermon. The thing that's interesting about that is that you can actually go back to the sermon on the live stream. And I have the quote that you said from that day that inspired this exact question.
Oh no, what was the quote? Oh boy.
Pretty neat, right? That we could do this. So I encourage the rest of you guys as well. Check out the live stream anytime you'd like to, and even sending questions after listening to the live stream.
Sure.
So that is pretty cool. We can look back at the live stream and see what was said.
So you're going to hold me accountable to what I said 2 days ago. Darn it.
You didn't say anything bad. It was in fact quite good. So this was just before the reflection.
Okay.
Yeah. And you said, quote unquote, what Paul is celebrating here is that people are going to join him on the day of Jesus' return. And that's going to be his crown. That's going to be his joy. That's going to be his glory.
I like it. Because I think
said it.
Well, I think Paul said it.
Yes. Yeah.
Isn't that what Paul said?
He does. Yeah. 1 Thessalonians, and I believe it's chapter 2, 19, around there.
Yeah. He said, for what is our hope or joy or crown of boasting before our Lord Jesus at his coming? Is it not you? So I think I just said the exact same thing that Paul did.
Ooh, yeah, I like that. There's an interesting thing with this question, though. When people are talking about crowns in heaven, there's a little bit of a duality here. It's, yes, crowns, but what does that really mean? Rewards? Right. Wages? Where does this even come from? So, do you know?
Well, I think... Do I know? I have, like anything else, I have opinion, I have a view. And I think there's other people that have other opinions and other views. I think the predominant view in our culture And I grew up with this, thinking this and having this picture in my mind that I was going to get up into heaven and there's going to be this award ceremony, right? And this person's going to get a big crown. This person's going to not get such a big crown. I've heard people say that, oh, I'm just getting, that's a jewel in my crown, right? Like there's going to be some people that have like one jewel and maybe some that have like tons. And we'll be walking around heaven going, I wish I had their crown. Wow, look at that crown. Like, and I believe that comes from kind of an earthly or a desire to be recognized that we have, right? We were talking before about, hey, I want to win the race and win the ribbon. I want to work hard and get rewarded for my work. And so we try to put this idea of rewards into something tangible, something that we can define very easily. I have a different view as I've looked at this from a bigger perspective. I think a bigger perspective or a grander perspective, and that is I think it has less to do with these individual rewards, and it's describing the reward we're going to feel when we finally reach that point. So like when Jesus said, I think the concept of crowns and rewards are more parabolic. Okay. Much like when Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like a pearl. Is he saying the kingdom of heaven is a pearl? No, but when you look at all these kingdom parables, it's like a pearl. It's like a lost coin. It's like a father. He's describing different aspects of what this one thing, the kingdom, will be. Yeah. And so when we talk about crowns and we talk about rewards, I think there's this, Jesus and Paul are doing some of the same things as they're trying to help paint a picture of what our hope is, what it is we need to look forward to. And I don't think it's, I'm going to get a crown and you're going to get a crown and they're going to be different. I don't think there's a physical crown.
I agree with this parabolic take that you're saying. It's very similar to, it reminds me rather, of how Jesus spoke to Nicodemus. If you don't understand these earthly things, how am I to convey to you? How could you possibly understand heavenly things? Right? So they're constantly trying to bring all these heavenly perspectives down to an earthly perspective. Say, look, you know what it's like to run a race. You know what it's like to be in a marathon. And don't these athletes train their bodies, discipline their bodies to receive the reward at the end of the race? And in fact, the word for the crown there at the reward at the end of the race is Stephanos, Stephen, the martyr, right? And he received quite a crown. He, in fact, before he died, not many people were able to see the glory of Jesus before they even died. But what a reward that is, too,
Right. We were talking a little bit before we came on, just trying to compare notes a little bit. And, there's several different crowns, and it was funny, you made a list and I made a list, and they're the same list. So that must mean they're pretty accurate. There's 1 Corinthians talks about an imperishable crown. All right, so our crown is going to be imperishable. Well, yeah, we've been invited into life and life eternal, right? Yes. John 3:16, they shall not perish but have everlasting life. So we get the crown. Our reward is this eternity that we have, a crown of rejoicing. And we see over and over in Revelation, we see all these pictures of great multitudes rejoicing. Yes. So we get to have fun. In fact, I always say to people, church worship should be fun. It should be full of joy because, and I get it, we want to have some reflective times, and we do that here at the Well, but there needs to be time where, doggone it, we should be able to throw the biggest party on the planet because our hope is bigger than anything here, even bigger than the Lions someday winning a Super Bowl. Imagine the rejoicing will happen then. I just wonder if we rejoice as much about heaven,
or
right?
the Bills.
Or if you're a Buffalo fan,
I'm from Buffalo.
You're from Buffalo, so you have
sad.
that. The crown of righteousness, the idea of righteousness being a right relationship with God, that our relationship with our Creator has been restored. So that's a reward that we get to stand in front of God with no fear of condemnation, right? There's no condemnation. So, how many times does God show up or an angel of God show up and people are like, cowering in terror.
Right.
We don't have to do that. That's going to be our reward. A crown of glory, as Paul is talking about here, that we get to share God's glory. We get to share Christ's glory. He's invited us into his family, not as slaves, but as friends and as co-heirs with Christ and as brothers and sisters. And then the crown of life. In Genesis, we were told that once the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was eaten, we got excommunicated from the garden. But in the garden, we are all familiar with the tree, knowledge of good and evil, but a lot of times we don't realize that there was a tree in there called the tree of life.
Right.
And then in Revelation, we now get to eat from the tree of life. We're brought back into the garden. We're brought back into relationship with God.
Yes.
So this idea of crowns, this idea of glory, I think it's parabolic to help begin to paint a picture of what life in his kingdom is going to be like. What are the things that we're going to experience?
I actually like that you mentioned earlier, almost every single time an angel appeared to people on earth, they fell on their faces as if dead. Right? Same thing with God. The glory comes down, whoa, they faint, or they're just scared to death. Like they there's a song that I'm reminded of from Cochran and Co. called Running Home. What a beautiful picture that is, to instead of being in shame or fear, like, Jesus is coming, this is a scary time, to instead be, I'm ready for this. I'm excited. This is
that's the crown of rejoicing, right?
Oh my goodness.
The crown of glory. Like,
love it.
Yeah.
That's a reward.
Yeah.
Back to the parabolic moment that we were saying, Jesus and Paul here, they're trying to take something that is very spiritual, very heavenly, and bring it down to earthly terms. This is something that we can understand as humanity, which is working for wages, or there's the parable that Jesus tells the workers in the vineyard, right? And so I think this is important to address, at least just momentarily, where throughout the day, the master of the vineyard goes and says, okay, somebody come on, please work for me, work in my vineyard. Does anybody want to work? He hires people as the day continues, right? And so some people are starting at the very beginning of the day, later on as the day progresses, other people are joining in, and then they start working too. At the end of the day, they go, okay, I'm ready to get paid for today. And those that worked longer hours, worked harder, did more, etc., they all received the same pay.
Right.
And Jesus responds saying, it is my desire to pay to the last, or to give to the last, is the actual word, to give to the last, just as to you. And so what we're discussing here is divine economy in a way where there's grace.
Right.
It's not about what we've earned or deserved, but it's God just abundantly providing.
Yeah, a lot of people will say, well, if I do this in my life, if I do that in my life, I'll get, closer. Like, and we talked about this too. Like the people that say, well, I hope I'm just good enough to just get in the gates, right?
Yeah.
I might not be good enough to get up in the front row, but I want to be good enough to get in. And that's how our brain thinks. Like there's this level. And I love a commentator I was reading on this section. He says, the ground at the foot of the cross is level.
Explain that a little further.
Well, there's no one at a higher plane. There's no one that's closer, right? Everything is level. And so there's not going to be this sense of, well, the really spiritual people are up close and the not so spiritual people are the back, because that would create a works-based salvation or works-oriented grace. And there's nothing more we can do to get closer to God. He's done it all. It is finished. It's over. There's no condemnation. We stand before him, holy, blameless, pure without. We're all there. We've all got the same reward at the end of the day.
Eternal salvation, eternally in the presence of God, in a place where there is no mourning, no sickness, no death, no night.
Right.
That's amazing. Let's discuss further where this thought of crowns even comes from, really. So James 1:12, he talks about the crown of life. Revelation 2:10 talks about the victor's crown. 2 Timothy 4:8 talks about the crown of righteousness. 1 Peter 5:4 talks about the crown of glory. 1 Corinthians 9:24 talks about the crown of victory, or the victor's crown. And then in 1 Thessalonians, like we're talking now, is the crown of rejoicing. That's where this all comes from. But could they possibly just be all the same thing in a way?
Yeah, I my view. Now, I know that there's other folks out there that will probably debate me, and that's fine. This is an open-handed thing. This isn't closed-handed, right? But I believe they're all talking about the reward. The reward is this. As I look through the whole of Scripture, the entirety of Scripture. The reward is a unfettered, unaffected by sin, fully restored relationship with our Creator God. That's the reward. And when we live in that, we have such a hard time. There's no way we could even begin to think about life without the impact of sin. Right. It affects every aspect of our life in ways we can't even realize.
That's correct.
And so what Paul and John in Revelation and Peter are trying to do, what God's trying to do through these writers is say, look, your reward, think about the best championship, the best position on this earth you could, a king or a champion of a race, whatever it is. Think of that. Now, that pales in comparison to the reward I have for you. Because my crown, it's a couple things. It will never tarnish. It will never perish. There won't be another champion. You don't have to defend your throne, because this is eternal, and this is about righteousness. My crown is about righteousness. You'll be right. You will feel what right relationship is all about. So he's taken this concept of what is the greatest reward you think you could have, and I want to define it in a whole new way for you, because it's so much bigger than that.
That's beautiful. Wow. There is a lot more that we could dive in with this question. There are many theological stances on this question as well. I've heard a lot of responses to this. So I encourage you guys to do your own studies. In fact, this can be a bit of a jumping platform.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I love it. Episode 3 in the books.
There we go. I guess we get to look forward to episode 4.
That's right. Please do join us this coming Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning. We would love to have you here at the Well in Brighton, Michigan.
Very good. Love to see you. Have a great day.
Have a great day, guys. Take care.